Take that, Dr. A-hole, with your lecture and mean talk. Looks like Tasha Too Early was right on time. I grew up loving children and knowing that I'd have at least 3 kids, if not more. I had a consistent babysitting job starting at 11. I studied biology in college to be a pediatrician and ultimately didn't continue and taught it instead because medical school didn't fit into my plan of being a mom. I know, I was young and dumb because clearly you can do both. But the good news is that the universe knew better and thankfully guided me in the right direction. First, I got to explore different careers. I started as a middle school chemistry teacher and high school biology teacher. I always had little projects and businesses on the side. I created a private tutoring business, a dance camp for high school dance teams, and I designed a home accessory line for boutiques across the country. And when it was time to move to the East Coast, my entrepreneurial background landed me a job in media sales, where I learned an entirely different set of skills and continued to explore and grow and succeed in that career for 11 years. I share this with you because our drive to create a career in life that inspires us is a big reason that more and more women may find themselves at IVF's door. And we should be proud of ourselves for our drive and ambition. I didn't marry that guy in my 20s that I would be divorced to right now, and instead I took a lot of risks and I jumped at opportunities, which ultimately made me well-rounded and marketable. By 31, I was married, and by 32, I started trying for baby number 1. I went into baby making thinking that we were just gonna do it, and then 2 weeks later, get a pregnancy test that said, "Of course you're pregnant, Tasha." But that last part never happened. With each month that passed, I did what we all do. I got more serious about the process. I started reading books and going to acupuncture. Then I started taking my temperature and using daily ovulation tests. Next, I learned to analyze my cervix for shape and substance. Egg whites suddenly had a whole new meaning. Around month 9, I told my OB how I was charting, and she started the initial fertility test with me. I was grateful she didn't make me wait a whole year. The tests were blood work and a hysterosalpingogram. This is where they put the dye up your uterus, which will then flow into your fallopian tubes and see if there's any blockage. Next, Brian had to get tested. He had the grueling process of watching porn and ejaculating into a cup. Poor guy. I felt so bad for him. We learned that Brian had low sperm count. 40 million is what they like to see to get pregnant naturally. 10 million is required for IUI, or as I like to say, turkey baster. Brian had 4 million. Brings a whole new meaning to it just takes one, because it don't. So IVF was the only option. I didn't expect that answer, and I immediately started bawling. I only knew one person at the time who'd gone through IVF, and the process sounded horrible. But then I turned my negative into a positive. I didn't have egg quantity or quality issues, and I'm quite the planner, so this could be nice. I'll do IVF once, fill up a cryogenics chamber full of my embryos, next to Walt Disney, of course. I'd figure I'd have 1 child every 2 years and have about 4 before 40. Please note that this insane thought process was before I have even 1 child. The thing that worried me the most was giving myself shots and not knowing how I would respond to the hormones. See, I can't even take the pill because I'm so sensitive to hormones. Sensitive as in batshit crazy. Ask my best friend Annie, who lived with me for many years. She was the only one who saw me on the pill. My rage could be compared to seeing the Hulk transform if the Hulk was just a little bit shorter, because I'm pretty tall in heels. For these reasons, I created the hit list, one of my strategies to use to relax in lesson number 3 of my online course. The hit list was a list of things that could immediately shift my mindset and calm me down without any substances. It was go time, round 1 of IVF. I went into my first round quite anxious. I had a case of fear of the unknown. The process was intimidating, the calendar of events overwhelming, and I feared reactions to the hormones with every new shot. At the egg retrieval, however, I had 15 eggs retrieved and was on my way to filling up that cryogenics chamber. But by the end, only 2 embryos looked normal. Of course, now I know that result is fairly normal. But at the time, these results sent my anxiety through the roof. I felt like I wasn't a good egg producer all of a sudden. Well, that round I got pregnant. One of the 2 embryos had implanted. But by week 7, there was no heartbeat. First reaction was extreme sadness, and then an immediate second was annoyance. I had to start all over, from the beginning. Everything went accordingly to the doctor. How could this have happened? Of course, no one had an explanation. You have to be okay with, I don't know, being an acceptable answer to this process. Yes, even when you just spend all of that time and money, emotional strife, and physical wearing. Round 2, I went into it angry. In the waiting room, I was annoyed that I had to be there again. I was annoyed by everyone I saw. This round, I started doing all the shots by myself. I was working full-time in New York City and had to go out with clients, so I needed to be independent. Here's a fun story for you. One night I was out with clients and I forgot a part of my needle. It was towards the end of my round, and the next night would be my all-important HCG shot. I felt like I was messing up right at the finish line, so I rushed home and immediately and frantically took the shot when I got home. The next night, I was ready for my HCG shot, the all-important, precisely timed shot that needed to release the eggs from the follicles they're housed in. This shot makes you ovulate, but instead of the eggs traveling down your fallopian tubes, the doctors are going to catch them right before they leave the follicle during the egg retrieval. It had to be perfectly timed because your appointment for the egg retrieval will be approximately 36 hours later. So if you take the shot at 7 p.m. on a Monday night, your appointment for your egg retrieval will be at 7 a.m. Wednesday morning. If you miss it, the eggs start to travel and you cannot collect them and your IVF cycle is ruined. Well, the night of my shot, we had dinner plans with another couple, one of our closest friends, Missy and Duke, and yes, they are as gorgeous and preppy as they sound. I needed to take the shot at 7 p.m., but I couldn't find it. It was packaged in a box branded Ovidril, and I'd been looking at that packaging in the fridge for a month now. Where did it go? So weird. I checked again and again and again. I kept all the meds in a bag in the fridge. The rest were there, so where was this Ovidril box that I had just seen? We tore up the house and found nothing. Brian took the dog out and came back home to me in the fetal position, bawling on the kitchen floor with the garbage can turned over, holding the empty Ovidril shot. I had taken it the night before. How did this happen? Well, I was rushed. I just grabbed the shot and wasn't paying attention. And second, the Ovidril box and pre-filled syringe look exactly like the Ganirelix box and pre-filled syringe. The colors of the box are different, but once you pull it out, it looks exactly the same. I couldn't believe I took the shot the night before. It was over. I couldn't forgive myself. I just cried and lamented that I'd ruined everything. I called the doctor on call, who I'd never met, and he was neither sympathetic nor supportive. He lectured me on how important it is to take the shot when you're told to, how there's no room in the egg retrieval the next morning, and how big a mistake this was. He apparently knew exactly what to say to calm me down. Thank you. Who needs a hit list when you have this guy? He finished the lecture with, "Come in at 10 o'clock tomorrow and we'll see what we can do." I hung up and then the self-abuse began. I couldn't believe I messed up the last important step. Why am I so dumb? Why don't I pay attention more? I'm always forgetting stuff because I'm in too much of a rush. I do this all the time. If I just slowed down. Endless self-abuse. So I went out to dinner and tried to take my mind off things. And from then on, I had the attitude of, oh, well, nothing I can do to fix this, so I just have to go with it. But my mental stability was hanging by a thread. And the mental abuse kept on creeping in. You stupid. Okay, stop. It's fine. Nothing I can do. We got to the clinic and they fit us in. As I waited for my turn, Brian and I kept the mood lighthearted. We laughed and made jokes. He put on a medical glove and pretended to do an anal exam. It's funny in person. Honestly, just somebody putting on a latex glove and sticking their finger up is funny for some reason. We were good. I was not bawling, and that was good. We finally heard the doctor approaching with the nurse. He asked, "Who's next?" And the nurse responded, "The one who messed up." The thin thread holding together my mental stability broke. I had been holding in my shame and sadness for 12 hours, and this comment just released the floodgates. I couldn't stop crying. I cried as I answered the prep questions from the doctor, through the walk to the operating room, inside the operating room. The nurses looked genuinely concerned and tried to assure me that this was a simple procedure and there'd be no pain, honey. I couldn't even catch my breath to get out what I was crying about. Thinking about it, I might have been having a full-blown anxiety attack, but I just know I couldn't speak, I couldn't catch my breath, and I could not stop crying. And then I was knocked out. Thank God for everyone, right? But then I woke up and I started crying as soon as I was conscious. And as we left, the bawling was a whimper. Then came the day where we were going to look at the embryos and they were going to tell me whether or not I should come in for a transfer. This clinic was big on day 3 transfers, which I never recommend. But at that time, I didn't have the piles of research and rounds of experience that I do now. If none of the embryos looked good after 3 days, I'd have to start this whole process over again. And the shaming and the stupid idiot internal name calling would continue forever. I knew I wasn't going to have any good embryos. They needed another full day to grow. But I got good news. I had 2 embryos that looked pretty good, and the transfer would be scheduled for that day. This was the same result as my first round. I hadn't totally ruined the cycle. Of course, I figured if I hadn't messed up, I might have had even more embryos, but overall, I was okay. And guess what? That was the round that allowed my son, Hudson, to join our family. Take that, Dr. A-hole, with your lecture and mean talk. Looks like Tasha Too Early was right on time. In your face, you bully doctor. You got me pregnant. I love you so much. The pregnancy was a roller coaster. He might have Downs. He may have a heart condition. You have placenta previa. And that took me right into a haunted house, a small New York City Pepto-Bismol colored hospital room that I had to stay in for 9 weeks leading up to a C-section a month before he was due. But I was able to walk away with a healthy baby boy, so who cares? Another plus, I now have great tips for you on how to get through hospital bed rest if you need it, so call me. Overall, my IVF story to conceive my husband was very easy. 2 rounds and I got pregnant both times. I didn't have any frozen embryos and I'd have to do IVF all over again from the beginning for my next child, but this process worked quickly for me. I was sure baby number 2 would be a piece of cake, and that was the right attitude, but not the reality. As you know, I've done IVF 10 times. My IVF story, part 2, is coming soon. For more of my personal stories, go to tashablasi.com and sign up to be an FU Insider. My FU Insiders get the most access to my fertility advice and adventures.